Hello, we welcome you in the Media Center Ukraine of Ukrinform. My name is Alina Frolova. Today is the 210th day of the repulsion of the Russian invasion, and today we devoted the day to Kharkiv, to liberation of Kharkiv region and the events which took place there. Now we have here Prymus, deputy head of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, and we would like to speak about the security situation in Kharkiv region, the work of SES in the region. Roman, could you please tell what's the main priority now for the work of the State Emergency Service, and how much of resource has been allocated for the work in the liberated parts of Kharkiv region? Hello. Well, first of all, of course, the key task for us is the restoration of the work of our units, because the functioning on the permanent basis will give the opportunity to increase the level of the security and to the opportunity for the people to come back to normal life. 16 units which were on the occupied territories, out of those 16, 9 are already working. Some of them have to be maintained and repaired. We have some of the measures for those units to work. Besides that, we have sent some of the units of two types. The one to take away the rubble, approximately 180 persons and 70 vehicles and which take away the rubble, which cleans the liberated territories which were destroyed by the shellings, and just to provide the main functioning for the settlements. But the biggest complication is demining, because we have approximately 8,000 of deoccupied territories, so Kharkiv region is polluted, that is approximately 12,000 square kilometers. All of that should be quickly demined. We'd like to mention that the intensity of mining is much higher than it used to be even in Kiev region, although it was very high here. We can really see the mining of the anti-infantry mines, so some of the territories are just filled with those mines along the roads, which makes the armament and vehicles movement complicated. The same concerns the population. So the key task is still demining. We have sent 129 pyrotechnics there. Those are the substantial part of pyrotechnics working all over the country. Those are the units of them. We are hoping to double the name of pyrotechnics there up to the 1st of October. The new teams are coming there every day. They're established at the territories and working there, because today, together with the civil military administration, we have defined some of the tasks to demine these territories till the end of this year. Those are the objects of the residential communal level, 18 of them, educational institutions, healthcare institutions, approximately 4,000 kilometers of roads which were on the occupied territories. We need to, in fact, look at all of them. The national and regional significance of the roads is the most important one, because that's why we have sent the first measures there. Then we are cleaning the territories for the power lines. That's approximately 50 kilometers of power lines which we need to observe. And also a separate story are the objects of energy provision, all of the 32 objects where we totally try to examine the territory around them to provide their full functionality, and the repairment works if it's necessary. And besides that, throughout the territories we need to provide the water supply, water disposal, the critical infrastructure which would be needed for the life. And of course all the residential buildings. This is the ambitious task we are appointing for ourselves, because the people are coming back, they want to come back, we need to provide them security. Okay, yes, really, the figures are impressive. According to your estimates, how much time approximately would you need to demine fully the territory, including all of the territories around that? And secondly, as the number of the experts is limited, could we rely upon the experts from other countries which could help in the speeding up of demining? Well, in fact, now We had the request for the government. Additional number of people were already allocated. 400 of pyrotechnics have been trained. They are working. Now we have an additional request for more pyrotechnics. As of the involvement of the foreign teams, they are already being involved. They are working, but not in the bigger amounts. We can speak about the higher scale of the involvement of those teams in case of when the combats are over, because we need to take into account that there are constant shellings in Kharkiv region. Even our teams under these risks so far. We do not involve foreign teams there. Mostly they're working in the Kiev regions, but there is such a perspective. We are working on that. I may say that the main efforts, about 80% on demining, will be done by the State Emergency Service. As of the possible time frame, what I mentioned above is just the first stage of demining. The second stage will concern the forests and woods, fields, water pools, because the pollution of water pools is very high. The active part of warfare was taking place around the water pools, and those are really hard and complicated operations to destroy the explosives which can be found there. So it's really very hard to assess the process. It can take several years, in fact, to be very objective, but in fact, if we speak about the whole territory of Ukraine, we need to understand that it could be at least for 10 years. We need to be objective in our assessments. Moreover, as we see what is taking place in Kharkiv region, and I think more or less the same situation is waiting for us in Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk regions. As of the taking away the rubble, according to the reports, Izium is almost fully destroyed for 80%. Other territories are also substantially damaged. So how do you take away the rubble? Do you plan to involve and to use the experience which was gained in Kiev region? Do you plan to use volunteers who would help you to take away the rubble and debris? Well, as of now, as I already mentioned, we have involved more than 180 rescuers who are taking away the rubble and debris. The algorithm of actions is the following. First, the pyrotechnicians are working, the deminers are working, trying to examine the territory for the possible explosives. Then the rescuers are coming to these territories, taking away the rubble and debris. At this stage, so far, we do not involve volunteers to take away the rubble to provide their security. There are some risks that the territory is mined. There is the risk of blowing up the territory. So when we see that the territories where the rubble is taken away are formally secure and we could involve volunteers, will use this opportunity. But so far those forces are more than enough, and the civil military administration is confirming that. We are in touch with them on a permanent basis to find out which are the priority tasks on the taking away the rubble and where we should focus our efforts. One more unit today left Kiev who would also be involved in the taking away the rubble. We are increasing the number of the rescuers, but we can do that only in the part where we have already examined the territories to demine them. As of your SES team, it's also part of the team which is dealing with exhumation of bodies. What do you know now? Do you have any statistical data? We saw that there was a huge mass grave found with 400 of crosses. Have you found out any other sites to exhumate? How do you cooperate with the local authorities for that? The key authority which registers these crimes is the National Police of Ukraine. We are providing the help and support in exhumation. I can only mention the events where we took part. More than 240 bodies were exhumated and found by us. There were certain procedures. Of course, they are much more numerous, but each part of the area is distributed between different units and authorities, so the statistical data could be provided by the National Police. Coming back to the topic of the destroying of your infrastructure, the state emergency service infrastructure in the region, all the firefighters should have a proper equipment, especially under the constant shellings. How do you fill this fund of equipment? Do your partners help you? And which needs do you have now? During the war, we focused a substantial reserve of the special attire for our rescuers. This is the first thing what they need, because the intensity of the work under such conditions is very high. We have already provided it together with the convoys sent there to our units. Secondly is the equipment, and in fact it could be up to 70 or 80% of equipment which was either destroyed or damaged or just vanished after it was under occupation. So, together with the units which we are sending there, we provide the minimum need. We are satisfying the minimum need in the equipment to respond to the emergencies which could emerge now. Those are the vehicles for firefighters, rescuers, equipment. So, as of today, we have enough of resources to provide the full-scale functioning of these units. The only point that some of them are damaged so much that they need the restoration from scratch. Of course, it makes our work harder, but the units which we have already restored are enough to provide a certain level of security at the first level. For instance, to respond to the fires which can emerge there. As of the sources of funding, I can mention that the government has allocated substantial resource to support the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, to acquire equipment, to acquire some of the protective gear. Besides that, we've got substantial support from donors. Approximately 700 units of special rescuers equipment was got from the international donors, but approximately 1,600 were damaged or lost. According to some of the estimates, we don't know exactly the numbers of Kherson direction because we don't have stable connection with some of the units. This figure can increase to 2,000 units of the lost equipment, but we've concentrated in the key directions where we need help most of all, where we need efforts most of all. We send some of the equipment from the western or central regions where the situation is more or less stable, strengthening the regions where we are working. The last question from me. The State Emergency Service is testing the new notification system. So does this system work in Kharkiv region and in other regions which are liberated now? Well, in fact, we are not testing this system on the territories where the active combats are going on, with the aim of security of the population, first of all, with the aim of the security for the military who are using these equipment. So, the system is tested just on the territories where we have more or less calm situation, where people can adequately respond these notifications. In fact, we are almost over with the testing process. We are working on some of the drawbacks which we found out during this time, and I think that since October we'll be able to work in the more or less casual mode using it, sending notifications where there are real threats. Besides that, I'd like to say that we are actively going on with our work, interacting with the population on mine security, and we'll conduct this work in Kharkiv region as well. This should be an informational campaign, because unfortunately there are lots of explosive devices which don't even look like ones, especially anti-infantry mines. This could be some plastic, for instance. So we'll work with the children, as we do in Kiev, Sumy, Chernihiv regions, with the population as well. So we urge the population to use our apps which we developed specially for that, to inform about the explosive devices or objects which they could find on the territory of their residential block or close to it, for us to respond rapidly and to assess the real situation as of the explosive, whether it's really dangerous and which forces should be sent there. I'd like to say that during the process of the launch of our system, both the app we got more than 8,800 notifications about the explosive devices. This is a huge number, and that gives us an opportunity to quickly respond to such notifications, because unfortunately the information transfer about the mining by phone is restricting us in the assessment of the situation. Got it? Thank you. Are there any questions among the journalists? Yes, please. Ukrinform. I remember that the superiors in the Ministry of Interior have addressed the international partners to get help to demine territories. Which countries, in fact, decided to help, and where do they help the process of demining? Thank you for the question. In fact, we have a huge activity among the international programs on demining. What we can definitely make public now, the readiness to help was confirmed by Canada, by the US, by the UK. Those are the countries which will definitely provide us with help and support on demining. I cannot provide you with the sums of money. We also signed the memorandum with UNDP, and the countries which provide fewer help will provide it through the UNDP, I guess. It would be more convenient for us because we have the single window communication, because UNDP is the organization which has experience in bigger scale procurements. It could speed up the process, then provide the process of the procurement separately with each country. Lots of countries are interested in that. The government of Denmark is cooperating with us, involving modern technologies on examining the fields and the roads for demining. We are working on that as well. But in particular, when we sign the documents, the papers, or when we find the funds, we'll inform in more precise way which country provided which help. So when can we get to the forests in Kiev? We'd like to collect mushrooms. Well, as of today, I may say that I think that during the next year, with such an intensity, you definitely cannot go to the forests and woods. If we used all of our efforts in the beginning of May or in the end of April with all the pyrotechnicians, and if they went on with their work there, we could say that they would shorten this period. But now we need to understand that the main forces of the units, including from Kiev region, were redislocated to work in Kharkiv, because we understand that when the main infrastructure in Kiev region is safe now, and we are speaking about forests and fields only, and I don't mean mined fields, because we have been working there, but some of the separate explosive devices found there, seeing the situation in comparison in Kharkiv, when we have the mined residential buildings, I think that the priorities are showing that we need to use, well, take the mushrooms which were preserved last year.
On August 9th, the U.S. State Department had announced an $89 million allocation. As part of that announcement, they said 100 demining teams would be funded. I'm wondering if any of those teams had been in the Kharkiv region, where the money came from, that $89 million grant. And has there been any other additional U.S. State Department or Department of Defense support for demining?
Yes, really, we have a deal about such help, which is distributed into two key spheres. First of all is the development of the humanitarian center for demining, because we need infrastructure to train our pyrotechnicians at the high level, and we also need infrastructure to train our pyrotechnicians to work with the new explosive devices, because even in Kharkiv region we can see lots of cluster ammunition, lots of explosive objects which are modern and did not explode. This is one of the spheres where we are working with the government of the US, and the second sphere is directly the equipment itself, which has to be acquired. But as of now, so far, we sent the list of our needs, what we need and in which volumes. We are waiting for the feedback from the government of the US as of the precise list what can be given to us. So we have a figure and we sent our needs. At this stage, we are trying to find out the future steps. So far, as soon as it's given, undoubtedly, all of this equipment will be sent directly for the most complicated areas, because this is the equipment for the pyrotechnical units which we created, and maybe re-equipment for those which have obsolete equipment. I would say that besides that, we have already conducted the procurement of the modern vehicle for demining, to work with anti-infantry mines, and up till the end of September it can be delivered here to the units, and it will begin its work in Kharkiv region as well. We managed to do that thanks to the project of U-24 and the allocated money for our service. Any other questions? Then I have the last question. You've mentioned that it's impossible to assess the scale of the damage on the territories which are still occupied. So, do the SES units still work there, on the territories which are occupied now? Because we have our citizens living there, and lots of shellings are taking place there. Well, according to the legislation and international contracts, the State Emergency Service is providing the humanitarian function on the occupied territories, including at some of the occupied territories our units are still working. We're trying to keep in touch with them, but there are units which have been damaged because of the shellings or were affected by the destroying of their armament, or their equipment, or there were cases that our rescuers were kidnapped. So I can't say that all of them are still working, but some of them, part of them, are still working because they need to perform the function providing help to the local population. That's what they're doing there. We are really grateful for your work and that you are going on with your work even during occupation. We do hope that the work on demining will be quick, rapid, and with minimal losses. Thank you so much. Stay with us. Media Center Ukraine of Ukrinform is here. The schedule of our briefings for tomorrow will be found in our Telegram channel or Facebook page or at the website. Thank you.